A while back I reviewed the Vortex Defender enclosed. Now that I've spent time with the Vortex Venom enclosed, there are like 3, maybe 4 big differences between these two, and it's not the footprint since they sit on the same style slide. But currently Defender enclosed sells for like $330, whereas the Vortex Venom sells for about half that, well, just over. So I'll walk you through the major differences between the two so you can know what the difference is and whether it's worth it to you. First, a big thank you to Optics Planet who sent both of these optics in, because it wasn't from Vortex that I got these things. I have no problems telling you exactly what I think about them. So I'll start with what's the same on the optics. They both have the same beautiful glass. They both have aspherical glass, which means that there is almost no distortion when you move the optic around on a target. You won't see the edges swirl like you see on the Trijicon stuff. That style of lens that the Trijicons use is called a Mangin lens, M-A-N-G-I-N, versus aspherical. Aspherical means that the curvature moves differently. It's like a prescription for a lens. It's got a better prescription than the Mangin lenses do. The windows on the sights are the same size, so there isn't an advantage of getting one over the other. If you think about it, they've got the same mission and need to be roughly the same size to compete in kind of the same class. They're just at different price points based on features. But the functional piece of what the optics do is pretty much exactly the same. They both look great on target. All right, the first and biggest difference between these two optics is that the Defender is made out of 70-75 aluminum, whereas the Venom is made out of 60-61 aluminum. And according to our AI overlords, the 70-75 aluminum is roughly 82% stronger than the 60-65, which means that this housing should be more robust. It should stand up to abuse better. But what you also notice is because the 70-75 is a lot stronger, you can use less of it. So the housing is actually thicker on the Venom, which is why the deck height is like 3 millimeters higher on the Venom than it is on the Defender. So if you need your optics sitting really low on the slide, the Defender is going to sit lower on the slide than the Venom will. On larger guns like these staccatos, I don't really notice a difference in the deck height. There's a little bit more co-witness sight on the Defender than there is on the Venom. And that's supposed to be important for toughness, right? So I did shoulder height drop tests on both optics down onto AR500 steel. It's the hardest stuff I can find on my range. There's not any concrete there. And then I did some steel post punching with both as well, testing them as slide rackers, and they both honestly were just fine. The zero didn't shift in either because they have similar electronics. Glass is good, but the glass is still good. So that being said, for a civilian's context, I don't think that there's a meaningful difference in the housing. If it can take a shoulder height drop test and punch those posts, it can do whatever you're going to ask for it to do in your concealed carry holster, where it's not going to be subjected to nearly as much abuse. The next biggest difference is that the Vortex Defender has a solar panel on top of the optic, and what that means is that when you're at the range, you don't necessarily have to tap your battery. You can use the ambient lighting to help power the optic and reduce battery usage, which means if you're somebody who doesn't change their batteries often and you show up to the range, your optic's still going to work. However, if that range happens to be at night, you're kind of hosed, because Sol is the name of our sun and it provides the power, and why they're called solar power for these things. So I don't know how useful a solar panel on top of an optic is. And one thing about the solar failsafes, they really are failsafes, not really a viable way to make the batteries last longer. And that's because if you think about a concealed carry optic, or even just a gun you take out and shoot on the range occasionally, the gun 99% of the time is going to be held in a holster under your garment if you're concealed carrying, or in a duty holster, which if you're using a duty holster, they generally have shrouds that go over the optics and knock the panel away from the sun, or they sit in the safe where there is no sun. So I don't know how good a solar panel is for actually extending the battery life. It's a fantastic failsafe on the range, but now you know. If you don't mind changing batteries on your optics, just a pro tip for you guys, pick a day that's meaningful for you, that you remember every single year, and have that be your battery day. Change the batteries on your carry optics, every year, and also do your smoke detectors on that same day, because if you don't, they're going to start chirping at 3 a.m. because that's when they always start chirping for whatever reasons. But because there is no solar panel on the top of the Venom, the buttons have shifted up there for adjusting the brightness. I actually like these buttons better. They're easier to get at. They're bigger buttons. They're nicer to manipulate. The next one, and this is a big deal for the I just want my guns to work and I don't want to do anything to them crowd. The stated battery life of the Defender just running off the battery is nearly double what it is on the Venom. This one is rated at 20,000 hours. This one is rated at 35,000 hours. So if you believe the manufacturer, that's nearly 2.5 years on the Venom before you change batteries and just over 4 years on the Defender. Those battery ratings, you will never ever see what the battery rating actually is out of the sight. And that's because when a manufacturer tells you what that is, they are using a much lower setting on the optic than you are likely to use if you set the optic to be daylight bright. So if they're telling you what the battery life is on a setting of 4 out of 10 settings, and you're keeping your optic set on an 8 or 9, you're gonna see approximately half that in real world use, which is why see the other thing about changing batteries on your birthday. This is gonna be a deal for some of you guys. It's not gonna be for the others, but reticles are different on the two optics. This only has like a 3 MOA dot available, whereas this one has the 3 MOA and a 32 MOA circle. You can get at the different reticle choices by pressing both buttons at the same time, and it'll cycle through the different optic settings. I just run it on the 3 MOA dot, so it's not a big deal to me, but some of you guys like that. And finally, this one is going to be more important to our law enforcement friends. The Defender comes with this like waffle iron stuff on the front of the housing. So if you're using the optic as a slide racker, it's going to get better purchase if you have to rack it off a wall or your boot or your holster or something like that. That doesn't mean that you can't use the Venom as a slide racker, because in my opinion, it works just the same, but there's other little features as well. This was more meaningful before the Gen 6 Glock got announced, but it comes with a pick rail adapter and a MOS adapter. Obviously, the MOS adapter isn't going to work on your Gen 6 guns, but in fairness to the Defender, it came first. The Glock came out over a year later when it was announced it shot, in 2026. I'll finish with my opinions on the sights and which would I choose if it were me. Now, I think the sights are honestly brilliant. I like the Delta Point Pro footprint for like 1911 style slides because they'll fit on, 2011s and stuff like that without a huge overhang. I think the glass is some of the best looking stuff in there. Neither of the round counts on these optics are particularly high. They're like low 4 figures on both, but they're holding up just fine so far. As far as which would I pick, if I'm just a regular concealed carrier, given my context, I don't need all of the stuff that the Defender does. The batteries I'm changing on a yearly basis anyway. The higher shroud doesn't really bother me all that much. So, I mean, spending half the money for getting basically the same functionality makes a lot of sense to me. And if I were picking to put it on a gun, that would be the one I would pick. Unless you really, really, really want the longer battery life on the Defender, then, the Defender is nicer, or you have a slide cut on the gun you're putting it on that makes the dot ride higher, in which case the lower deck height of the Defender is certainly worth checking out. But I'm curious which ones you would pick based on the, roughly $330 price tag or the $180 price tag. Which one would you be interested in? Sound off in the comments. Thanks again to Optics Planet for helping make this video possible. Thank you for watching it. Subscribe to the channel if you're not. And as always, I appreciate you guys, and I'll catch you on the next one.